Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Soul Conversation. And I have a beautiful guest from US again. I never told Karlee, who's going to join me today, that the audience is mainly from US as well, which I love. I love.
I love that as well.
Please
Perfect.
welcome Karlee and introduce yourself and just lovely
Sure.
already.
So I'm Karlee Fain. Professionally, I'm an executive coach and a leadership strategist, and I really work with folks who are going through significant growth or challenge or transition in their careers, and they want something that's more regenerative in nature. And when I say regenerative, we call it the big three, which is this ability to have both a career, but also health and relationships that all support each other so
Yeah,
that leaders don't have to feel like they're pulled in a thousand directions anymore, where they're thinking about work when they're home or vice versa, that all of these things can fuel each other so that it's much more sustainable, both for the leader, but for those that they work with and the communities that they live in, and our planet as well. How do we um, use business in such a way that it improves quality of life rather than degrades quality of life?
I love that. I love it.
Yeah. And most of the leaders I would say that I work with are incredibly capable people.
Yeah.
And that's actually the problem because they've
Mm.
built something based on their ability to make good decisions and to handle pressure or responsibility or emotional weight, which is what you have to do a lot of times when you're getting
Mm.
something off the ground. But at a certain point, that stops becoming leadership and it starts becoming a liability
Yeah.
because it's that same thing that got you here, that hustle or gusto or adrenaline, that
Yeah.
got you through the door is really difficult to sustain. And so I'm here when that's no longer working and we're looking for
Mm.
something more sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have a very interesting story as well.
This is so fun because I've had the pleasure of having interviews and conversations in the past, and
Yeah.
I have never gotten to talk about much about my upbringing in a yoga ashram, which is where I
Yeah.
was raised, which absolutely influences this work. And the older I get, the more I see, oh, these are not original ideas, Karlee. You learned these,
Yeah.
from somebody else when you were a kiddo. And they sound revolutionary. They're not. These have been around for thousands of years from great teachers in India and beyond. Um, and so I'm excited to get to explore this with you. This is going to be as new
Yes.
for me as it might be for somebody listening. How cool is that?
Yes. And the thing is, I always ask one question to all my guests, which is um, who you were as a child. So that's like really with your upbringing and everything. And yeah.
What a great question.
Mm.
As a child, I was so curious.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I always felt a little bit like other. I didn't feel like I fit in any one place.
Mm.
And mm, prior to living in the ashram, my family lived in New Jersey and in a more urban area. I was
Mm.
the only white kid in my class, and I actually felt rather embraced by that
Yeah.
community. And then we moved to this ashram, which was run and founded by folks from Gujarat, India, but was in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And um, it was such a radical change. I was 9 years
Yeah.
old at that time, and the community was so loving and so caring. And there were very few children because there was a practice of celibacy. So unless
Yeah.
you came in already married with kids, there weren't a lot of kids. So all of a sudden we had all these aunties
Wow.
and uncles, who
Wow.
were there to love us and take care of us.
Yes.
And so there was always this kind of like this identity sense of where do I fit in?
Yeah.
There's this part of me that Loved the urban environment of New Jersey, and this other part of me that is delighted. The ashram had a lot of land, and a lot of it was
Mm.
in the woods, to just play barefoot in the woods all day and run around and be free in this really safe environment. Um, all of those things were always true for me, and I think a part of me was always looking for, where are my people? You know,
Mm.
where are my people who
Yeah.
um, want to run barefoot in the woods and want to play business, which is
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. I wanted to play CEO. I wanted to set up pretend stores and sell things or have lemonade stands. And I loved going to yoga, you know, and I loved, you know, going to the chanting, all of it. So it was
Yeah.
always this, it always felt like there was multiple worlds happening at the same time.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I can just imagine. I mean, it's a big transition at that in that age because you also had to move states or whatever you say. Like it's it's also a big transition, of course.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and as you say that, I'm thinking, "Oh, no wonder I help people with transition."
Yeah,
No wonder I
of
got
course.
interested, right, in the nature of transition. Because, geez Louise,
Of
I
course.
was going through my own transitions, and
Yes.
aren't we always? But, yeah, there it is. There it
Can
is.
I just ask, and if you answer if you can, and so on, but why your parents choose to, you know, make the
Oh.
transition and
Great question. So years later, that was a question I had for my parents too, of
yes.
why, because they
Yeah.
came from families where this was a going to an ashram was a surprise. This was
Yeah.
not the culture of their families of
Yeah.
origin. And both of my parents felt that they had never quite found their community either, that
Mm.
they loved their family, their friends, their, you know, their work, but they were looking for a connection that felt more than transactional, more than surface level. And
Mm.
they had come to the ashram was a Kripalu ashram,
Mm.
and run by Amrit Desai at the time, no longer. And they had come and done some programs at the headquarters in Massachusetts and loved it,
Yeah.
and heard that the ashram was interested in piloting a new program, which was this idea of, could it be possible for people to reside within an ashram that's still self-sustaining, like most
Yeah.
intentional or spiritual communities are, but it's not an island unto itself. Could it
Mm.
be possible that people could have jobs outside of the community, and there could be some children, and the
Yeah.
children could go to school outside of the community, and that there would be more connection between the ashram and the surrounding community rather than these two separate silos. And my
Yeah.
parents were um, there's my dad was working in construction at the time, and the market had crashed in New Jersey for that, and he was looking for new work, and they thought, now's the time, like,
Yeah.
let's do it, let's make this leap and see what would a modern ashram look like in the United States that stays true to its roots, but is there for more than just the community itself, that it would be connected and beneficial to others around. So my parents said, let's do the experiment.
How did they find it? I mean, was it through someone or
Oh, this is a really fun story. So my mother has a dear friend. My parents were
yeah.
living in New Jersey, and a few states above that
Mhm.
is Massachusetts. And my mom had a dear friend, and they were going to get together for the weekend. And of course, this is pre cell phone, pre,
Yeah.
you know, texting, when people made
Yeah.
plans and then you just had to show up or
Yeah.
not.
Exactly.
And they had made plans to meet together somewhere in the middle, you know, and have a girls'
Mm.
weekend. And something went wrong. Their reservation fell through or something, and they had no way of knowing until they got there. And
Yeah.
so suddenly they found themselves, it just feels like it's out of a storybook. It's a dark night. They're kind of driving around looking for a hotel, like, where do we stay now? And there was this little light that said Kripalu. And so they pulled in thinking, oh, this is like a hotel, and realized, oh, this is an ashram. Um, and the ashram at that time, one of the ways that they made income was offering personal development programs, and people could come and
Ah,
do retreats just for the
yeah.
weekend or for a week. So they said to my mom and her friend, okay, well, this is a surprise, but you can stay here. rooms you could stay in, and we'll feed you for the weekend. And that was how they found him. And that was the beginning of they both started coming intentionally then a few times a
Yeah.
year to do programs and retreats and got to know the community. And then when they found out that they were going to reopen a branch in Pennsylvania that had been dormant, that's where they had started the ashram. That's
Wow.
when my folks signed up in.
I
Yeah.
love it. Because I
Isn't
never heard
that
about it.
wild? Like
That
just driving
yes, it
around
is
at
wild.
night, just
Yes.
looking, it feels like just looking for a place to stay. And
Yeah.
there it is. There it is.
And also have the, universe like, okay, let's give you this
Right, right.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
exactly what we needed and didn't know it. Didn't know it.
No.
And exactly what we needed. Yeah.
So when were you feeling more and more kind of a pull or a drive with the corporate and the business side
Mm.
of who you are?
It's a great question. I think it was innate, right? I loved your
Yeah.
first question about as a child,
Yeah.
my grandparents lived in New Jersey, and I just remember they had those TV trays,
Yeah.
from the 50s, you could eat your
Sure.
food and watch. And they had these TV trays and this like multicolored shag carpet in the living room. And I would set up those TV trays as if it was a store,
Yeah.
and sell my wares, which was
Yeah.
whatever was, laying around the house. And that was my pretend play. And so I remember doing that. Those are some of my earliest memories. And then being in the ashram, we were the only kids who went to public school. And I wanted to take all those classes. And as I got older and went to a different school, I wanted to be in the economics classes and in the business classes. And I think I wanted the independence of having a little extra money in my pocket. The idea
Yeah.
of, oh, I could go buy we weren't allowed to have sugar in the ashram. And so that's all we wanted was a candy bar. It was like, somebody give us like a cookie or a candy bar, please. It's like, oh, if I earn my own money, I could buy a candy bar. Like,
Yeah.
and that was very motivating when you're
Yeah.
10 years old and 11 years old and there's no processed sugar in sight.
Yeah.
And and so I think I knew from a young age that this interests me and that I've always been a little bit I guess rebellious is the word. Whatever
Yeah.
everybody's doing, I'm interested in the other thing. And
Mhm.
if everybody's really peaceful and healthy and eating well, then what's the other thing?
Yeah.
Like what's the other thing? Like let's go do business where it's
Yeah.
generally very structured.
Mm.
There's spreadsheets and there's organization and we can drink coffee and have donuts. And
Mm.
um yeah, so I think there's always was this curiosity about options, the different ways people might live and work. And I was always curious about what are the different ways that people
Mm.
might live and work. And if I'm experiencing one at home, well, then I'd love to be exposed to others,
Yeah.
out in the world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what happened then with like
Mm,
when did because I know you studied something that you really wanted to study as well.
right, right. Well, a
Mm.
couple interesting things happened, which was when I was around 15, the
Mm.
ashram closed.
Oh,
And it was a really interesting dynamic, which could be a conversation for another time. But the gist
yeah.
of it was that the guru at the time was doing unethical things, and the community
Mm.
members found out. And the short version is they asked their own guru to leave,
Mm.
which is very rare. Like very,
Yeah.
very rare that happens in a community. And the community wanted to continue to exist,
Yeah.
and but did not
Strong
want
community.
that guru. Say it again.
Strong, like strong community, strong boundary setting and in the community.
Abs- Absolutely.
That's
A lot
yeah.
of the teachings talk
Mm.
about an incoherence. The teachings
Yeah.
of there had been two generations of gurus at that point. And so the
Yeah.
teaching of the current guru at that time was wonderful and all about integrity and alignment and doing the right thing. And on the side, he wasn't always. But the community members really held that sense of integrity. And when they
Mm.
found out that he was, really up to some unethical things, they spoke with him about it and they created a plan for let's mend this. And he
Yeah.
agreed to the plan and then didn't honor the plan. And so they said, you got to go. We really believe in this work and we want to continue doing this work in the world. And you're not the leader for
Mhm.
this anymore. And he had the community had been wise enough to put the land in Massachusetts in their own name, but
Mm.
the land in Pennsylvania was in the guru's name. And so he said,
Mm.
okay, I will go, get off my land.
Oh,
And so people were immediately dispersed. I mean, talk about a
mm.
rough transition. That was a
Yes.
really rocky. My family was lucky. My parents had a little house had come up for sale on adjoining property, and
Yeah.
we lived in a little house that my parents owned. But overnight, everyone we knew was displaced.
Yes.
Um, and and for those living in Massachusetts, they were able to stay, but suddenly the entire structure of the organization was, and a lot of what people believed in was called
Mm.
into question. So it was a real existential crisis, in addition to a practical
Yeah.
crisis, which is a conversation for a whole nother show.
But I can
Um,
also, oh, sorry.
yeah. Oh no,
I
go right ahead.
I can also imagine that it was like your family had to leave
Absolutely.
or split up or like
Exactly.
mm.
And it was a strange thing in many ways. One of the ways was that there were certain people who still felt great allegiance to the guru and
Mm.
wanted to stay with him. And he went and founded another ashram in Florida, and people went down there. And
Mm.
then there were people who felt, I think, more similarly to my parents, which was we love the learning, we want to be part of the community, but we're no longer devotees of the guru.
Mm.
Um, and so there was a kind of a separation too of who's going to continue to be a devotee and who is not,
Mm.
and all the different ways that could look. So yeah, it was like having your family suddenly,
Yeah.
disperse overnight. And at the time I was 15, so
Mm.
I'm as self-centered as a teenager can be. So I know
Yeah.
all of this is happening. It's having direct impact on us. And I'm having crushes for the first time and zits and trying to study, and like
Yeah.
you're living your kiddo life at the same time all of this is happening. And through many conversations now as an adult, I have a better understanding of the logistics of what was really going on, behind the scenes at that time. But it was a big change, and I have no doubt that that change influenced me significantly in that um,
I
I
know what you're going
became
to say.
wary of leaders
Yeah.
who um, say one thing and do another.
Yeah.
And not just leaders, of humans. I have a dear friend who, Maria Serwa, who calls it the Godzilla effect from, like, the original Godzilla movie, of course, was in Japanese, and then it was dubbed in all these languages because it
Mm.
was popular around the world. And if you watched it in any language other than Japanese, then, the mouth and the words didn't quite line up. And that Godzilla effect of when I see that in other people, if I see it in myself, certainly if I see it in leaders, is something that I'm very attuned to, and
Mm.
very aware of. And am very eager to see more wonderful people whose words and actions match up in positions of leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. And what came to me right now was that also, did that affect you, like you or your decision to then later on study, you know, like business laws, uh, kind of from that experience? That's just coming through me. I don't know
Right.
if that's correct.
In retrospect,
Hmm.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
do not think that I was cognizant of it at the
No.
time, right? But in hindsight, like, what I would love to say is, "Oh, I had this perfect plan all along and
Yeah.
everything went exactly as I thought." And, like, that couldn't be farther
Subconsciously.
from the truth. Yeah.
Subconsciously. Yeah.
But subconsciously, right,
Yeah.
the idea that all of these things were informing me. They were like seeds
Yeah.
planted,
Yeah.
right? And years later, they start to click into place. But during that time, I rebelled, I think, as far as I could from this idea of healthy living. I thought like, oh, forget about it.
Mm,
I'm going mainstream. I want to eat McDonald's and I want to, watch TV and I want to go work in corporate or be a lawyer, or anything like that.
mm,
And when that became unsustainable for me in college, when I started to get really overwhelmed, I had many jobs in order to
mm,
pay for college. So I'm working a couple full-time jobs while in school. And I remember calling my mom, and she was so gracious, and telling her how I had found yoga and I
mm,
was going to start taking a yoga class as if
mm,
it was my own idea. And she was so
mm,
sweet, like, "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. I'm so glad you found yoga," as if they
mm.
hadn't been teaching it to us our entire
Yeah.
childhood. And so somewhere in me was this idea when I saw that purely running on adrenaline, which is a very Western
Mm,
model and it's very
mm,
popular here, is not really sustainable for most people. That there was this part of me that was able to go, wait a minute, but I've seen people be healthy and balanced. What were they doing?
mm,
And what have I learned? And
mm.
and I could draw, like, those seeds started to sprout and I could draw on
Yeah.
that and go, well, I could do a pranayama, I could do some breathing. Why don't you do
Mm,
some breathing, Carly? And that was in there somewhere. But I think perhaps true to my rebellious nature, I had to feel like it was my idea or that I was ready, that
mm,
it wasn't something that I knew on paper was healthy. We all own lots of things on paper that we could be doing. We could all be drinking more water and we could all be stretching more. We know that.
yeah.
But there's a reason we don't do it.
Mm,
And for me, I was uncomfortable enough that I was willing to do it.
yeah.
Of the like, I am so stressed out and overwhelmed. I can already see that this is not sustainable for me. Let me
Mm,
start with a few breaths.
yeah.
um, Let me start with a once a week yoga class, and just get back into my center 1% more. And then that gently snowballs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
But do
So
you
it was in
believe
there.
exactly what I was going? Do you believe that the body kind of started to like that you were so intuitively attuned because otherwise you could have ignored it and
I am
continue.
so thankful for my body,
Yeah.
my physical body, because my physical body will and I don't always like it, but it will hold me accountable to
Yeah.
living in integrity.
Yeah.
Um, and and it'll do that often through things that are very uncomfortable for me. So the first round was in college. I dropped out after 2 years because I
Mm,
started to have these really severe migraines,
mm,
depression like symptoms, really just didn't feel like myself.
yeah.
And um, I remember, I had no money. I was renting this little apartment for the summer. It was super hot. I couldn't afford air conditioning. Um, and I was laying in bed with another massive
Mm,
migraine and couldn't have the lights on,
mm,
couldn't smell any food. Like all my senses were triggered by the migraine. And I'm laying in bed. I had called out of work and I remembered thinking, oh my gosh, the only time I just lay still is when I have a migraine.
mm,
I went, "Oh,
yeah.
like maybe there's not something wrong with me. Maybe this is the only way my body can get me to be still for
Mm,
a moment." And it was this aha. And I remember the migraine lessening like 10% instantly, not all gone, but instantly a little better. And I went, "Well, that's interesting. Like what's happening there?" And throughout my
mhm,
life, in different cycles, in different ways, my body has shown up and gone, I hear you want to do more, but we're done. Like
mm,
we're not doing more, and that'll be through a stomach ache, through a migraine, through whatever. You
yeah.
know, uh, you've done enough. Like it's time to sit still again. So, what a great question about the information in the body.
Yeah. I think from my perspective and my experience, it's um, almost all my life subconsciously I have listened to my the energy and the body without being um, conscious aware. But then the last couple of years I had to work with my body and stuff that went on in my personal life, but also so related to being born in India and adopted here, like to the root cause of my trauma and survival and money and like a lot of stuff.
Right.
So I would say 2 years ago, I received inflammation in my body because of stress, because of survival energy. And I was resting, but I still had it there because I was in my victim. Like there was so much at once and a
Right.
lot of like healing at once, everything at once. And now, 2 3 years later, now I healed it, so it's gone. So I can actually have wear this, which is with pants again, and
Right.
I could just see the body because I knew that this is not like quote unquote fat. This is energy,
Hmm.
like stored energy that will be remote, but still.
Right.
So I always thought that, when you're like 5 seconds and then you would have been in the burnout. But to be honest, I think I really was that a couple of years ago because
Hmm.
I was very, had this big inflammation without accepting that truly, you know?
Well, and it happens for most of us slowly, right? Like
Yeah,
it's a slow increase in something that's
it
not, it's a
is.
whisper, right? It starts
Okay.
gentle and then it might get to a place where it's hard to ignore. But you're saying
Yeah.
something that I relate to, and I think a lot of my clients relate to, which is this idea of if you're the high achiever and you're wondering if you're nearing burnout, you're
Mm.
probably so deep into burnout already. Like the reality is like, but our gauge, because we're used to carrying so much for
Yes.
all sorts of reasons, our barometer may be a little bit skewed as to what too much is or what we think we can
Mm.
handle is. And sometimes we're different in different seasons. What I could do when I was 23 is different now that I'm
Yeah.
in my mid 40s. It's just so my barometer, but my mind doesn't think it should be different. My mind thinks
Mm.
I should have as much energy and I should be able to
Yeah.
do, I should think the same way. And that's not reality. And so there's something so sweet about extending grace to ourselves if we don't realize until we're deep into the burnout, because how could we know until we know,
Mm.
and if and sometimes it has to get that loud.
Yeah.
Like you said, this full on inflammation or me, laying in bed unable to do anything
Mm.
before we go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on here. What else might be happening? And I don't want to be dismissive of people who have medical concerns that are not related to stress or,
No, no, no,
um,
no.
but for those of us, especially the things, I don't think I work with a single leader who doesn't have some type of physical symptom that they know would improve
Mm.
if they could take better care of themselves.
Yeah.
Whether that's a headache or an autoimmune thing that flares or a reproductive system issue that they know exacerbates when
Yeah.
um, they don't get what they need, what their body physically needs. Yeah.
But do you, Carly, do you believe that, for example, autumn, okay, I can't pronounce it, but auto, no, what do you say?
I
Diseases?
always think like autoimmune. Yeah.
Autoimmune. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Autoimmune diseases. That the coloration from that is like an unhealed trauma stored in the body. What do you think?
It is wild to me that you're asking this question in this moment because I am in the middle of asking that question a lot right now as I've recently had an autoimmune diagnosis
Oh,
and I'm carrying a lot of question about
yeah.
that. A lot of question about okay, so because my I have Crohn's disease
Mm.
and ulcerative colitis and I've probably had it my whole life, but was only diagnosed in the last year as all of a sudden my symptoms became more than I could manage through just regular diet and contemplative practice.
Yeah.
And and so I am holding right now an awareness that I th- that many things can be true at the same time.
Mm.
But I do not think, in my being, speaking only for my body and nobody else's body or experience, but only for my body, I do not think it is coincidental that my flare happened at the same time I started to do deeper trauma-based therapy.
Mm.
And I thought, how interesting that the gut, when we
Yeah.
think solar plexus chakra
Mm.
um, is suddenly inflamed, which is where, for those of us who have maybe a yogic practice would think about, that's where a lot of information enters the body and then it's ascends to the heart. Um, like how interesting that that part, my gut, is inflamed. At the same time, I am through doing some really deep therapeutic work learning to access my voice
Mm.
or navigating through complex traumas
Mm.
that happened also when I was a child. And so there's this part of me that thinks many things are true at the same time.
Mm.
And there's also this very database scientific research that's emerged out of COVID as a result of COVID, and suddenly so many um, doctors, scientists, researchers quickly, looking for a solution for COVID. One of the takeaways in the Western world, which I don't think would be news in the Eastern world, but in the
Mm.
Western world, there was this new idea that perhaps um, autoimmune diseases might be the result of lots of viruses that are dormant within the body that become active, that we thought
Mm.
were just traditional flu, or this
Mm.
idea that there are lots of viruses that we may be carrying that are then activated by stress
Mm.
or another illness or a traumatic event. And so
Mm.
I'm holding without any real answer.
Mm.
This feels like a question to hold for years, if not decades or a lifetime. This idea of where does the intersection of all of these possible truths, right? Of
Mm.
how much of this is a response to trauma, how much of this is a response to daily stress, how much of this is a response to a virus,
Mm. Mm.
or an environmental factor, a pollution, or something else. And then based on that, where does it feel true for me to focus my attention in terms of
Yeah,
healing?
of course.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to go the medication route? Do I want to go the Ayurvedic route? Do I want
Mm.
to go, on a journey of my own self, healing, like, or some combination thereof? Like, what is
Mm.
appropriate? And it's such an important question, and I'm so glad you asked it. And if I had one request right now for all of us, it would be, can we stick with the question and not rush the answer? Because I
Mm.
think the answer is complex. And
Mm.
I suspect that it is different for each of our bodies and our experiences, and what might be true for one person and might be totally different, but absolutely true for somebody else, and I think that this shows up for me in business,
Mm.
but it's the same as on a yoga mat. This
Yeah.
idea of gosh, what is it? Atta Nasham? No. The first Punjanjali's first yogic principle. Atta Yoga Nushasanam. There it is. Atta Yoga Nushasanam. Now the inquiry of yoga. So like the
Mm.
first sutra is this invitation for, can we be on the inquiry and
Mm.
not rush the answer?
Mm.
Um, and I know that I crave, or parts of me crave, certainty so deeply. Like I just
Yeah.
want like someone to say the right thing, that's the thing, and now I go do it and it's all better.
Mm.
And so many leaders get promoted because they have a quick answer or the loudest answer, or are so convicted in their perspective that we all think, oh, that must be true. But a rich, delicious question like yours of what role might our trauma play,
Mm.
in the symptoms or illnesses we experience? That to me is like a
I mean, I have
multi-generational
much truth.
question.
I have absolutely
Yeah.
much truth in it, but I truly love what you're saying with not rushing the answer, because I believe since we are all humans, so much is also similar. We are
Right.
very much, but we have
Right.
different experiences, like you say. So, and different belief systems
Right.
because of the experiences. So somehow you, from my perspective, you have to find your truth because you have it within you, of course.
Right.
That's my
Right.
belief. We all have everything within us. And there is no right or wrong answer. Like if you would go, I'm like pointing my finger now, well, like round this way and then back and then this, and healing is not linear. So, and I
Right.
go here on this side, and then we come back together and like, oh, you're sharing with me, and we are talking about the same thing, but just different angles or different perception.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what I believe. Because if someone would say to me, no, you have to like be very convicted. Yes, I'm very convicted.
Right.
Healing is kind of the root cause of, like, not the trauma. I mean,
Right.
trauma,
Right.
um, the root cause of all, actually all illnesses. That's my truth.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it can also, even if it comes from that environment or other thing, it's still something there that's,
Mm.
yeah. But
Oh, that leads me to
we
such a,
need to search for, we need to search within us so we can feel really confident as well with our truth, if that makes sense.
it makes complete sense. And I think it begs another wonderful question, which is, how do I discern what is true?
Yeah.
Right? How do I discern? And it's interesting because I'm similar to you in the body information. Like
Mm,
somebody's speaking and it feels true, my body feels relaxed or it
mm,
feels energized. Somebody's speaking and it doesn't feel true, I feel tight. I
mm,
feel I feel a little on guard, right? And it's such a physical sensation for me. And
mm,
I think I assumed that everybody, that was one of the ways they discern truth. One of the things I've learned through knowing folks who have experienced physical trauma is that their relationship to the information in their body is tricky.
yeah.
If they've experienced physical trauma, the way the body can shut down to protect itself means that pathway isn't as easy to access. So they might discern truth through more of an emotional reaction, or,
Yeah.
they need to think about it logistically, or, and so for all of us to just go, and this circles back to whether we're thinking about health or we're
Yeah.
thinking about what leader am I following or what information am I believing? It's
Mm,
it's how do I personally discern truth? Like
mm,
how do I know? What does it
mm.
feel like for me when something feels true or untrue? And going on that inquiry, I think could lead to the clarity and the empowerment that you embody in your
Mm.
conviction of this is what's true for me.
But it's
You know.
been a journey. Oh my
Right.
God.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
still on it. I'm still on it. Because I've been like people pleasing, codependency, reaction, like all of that. And kind of my karma lessons has really been, if I would go into astrology and that part, has really truly been this, like that I was,
Right.
oh, you think this way, that's your opinion, oh, I take that, oh, I take this, instead of like, but what's true in my body and in my energy, in my heart, in my soul, like everything,
Right.
what is true. So I
Yeah.
would say that that's been my, like, I'm 51 today, it's been a journey. Sure.
Well, and,
And
and
that's
I
it.
love the candidness of that, right? I think
Yeah,
that's the idea. And that's who I, in this moment, gravitate to are
exactly.
the leaders, the teachers, the mentors who
Yeah.
are on the journey
Yeah.
with everyone, that we're
Yes.
all, there's this honesty about, yeah, we're all figuring it out in real
Mhm.
time. We're all hopefully working on
Exactly.
something, and
Yes.
feel inexperienced in some new area that we're
Absolutely.
exploring. And to me, there's such beauty and authenticity in that of,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a journey. And
It is.
let's
Yeah.
be in the journey together. Like how nice would that be to be
Yes.
in the journey together rather than feel that we're individually alone in figuring it
Exactly, and
out.
separate and all of that. Yeah, because
Right,
I can
right,
relate so much in your story, not your experiences, because
right.
I haven't had that upbringing, but so much that you and most of my guests and most of the people I attract in is like when I grew up, I felt too much, or I felt rebellious, or I felt like the black, like just different labels. I'm like, yep, that's me. That's me.
Us wonderful, for lack of a better term, like
Yeah,
weirdos, us wonderful weirdos who
exactly.
if there's time for a 30-second story, I have to tell you one of my
Yes,
favorite stories about that is for
absolutely.
a long time, my business model was such that I would be the live-in coach to one high profile leader at a time.
Yeah,
And so I'd be with them everywhere they went. And one time I'm on a client's jet and I'm sitting on the in the table, here I am, this little
yeah,
ashram girl, who now flies on people's jets. And I'm sitting at a table in the middle of the plane, and the executives and my client and everybody are, dispersed doing their own thing. And the head of the record label for that particular record label for Sony
yeah.
turns to me and he goes out of nowhere and goes, Carlee, were you the weird kid when you were in school? Out of nowhere. And I thought, oh my God, here we go. I'm going to be the weirdo again. Like, here we go. And I thought about it for a minute and I went, yeah. And he went, look around. We were all the weird kids in school.
Oh,
And that, I mean, I could tear up now in that
yeah,
moment. And I did. I looked around and I went, these are all the misfits,
yeah,
that didn't quite fit in, who continued to follow their passion or their heart, and now are creating something new and interesting that hadn't
mm,
been seen before.
mm,
And so to all the weirdos out there, like, I'm
yeah,
just so grateful for us. I'm so grateful for the following your heart, and even if it looks a little different or a lot different
yeah,
than what's around you, and um, what goodness we can bring forth,
yeah.
if we stick with that in a way that makes sense. So, Jaya, I'm so grateful to you and
The
this
same,
space
the
that you
same.
create for exploration of different
Yes,
viewpoints. It's so important.
it is. It is so important. And this is also the beauty. I said that the other day, like with the storytelling. For me, my podcast is all about to not feel alone. I don't want people to feel alone because I felt a lot alone in my life without expressing it because I felt that the depths that I love and the philosophical questions and all of that, I didn't, you know, I wasn't being met on the depths that I, desired. And I couldn't express it either, to be honest. But uh, so I truly want everyone to feel that they are part of something bigger because we are,
Mm.
from my perspective, we are coming from the same source. If you believe in God or if you believe in universe or if you believe in, I believe that we all come from love, like every
Mm.
single part of us, even and that we both have the polarity of, the darkness and the light.
Right.
They have to coexist. Everything has to coexist. So for me right now is to stay as neutral as possible, even if there is a lot of things that could trigger, like to really, okay, be more zooming out instead of being
Oh,
emotional. Yeah.
well, that to me sounds like, witness consciousness,
Yeah.
and this last week I was speaking with a woman who reads Akashic records.
Mm.
That's her work, and she said a phrase I've never heard in my entire life, and I can't believe it because Kripalu, the name of the ashram that now is the largest yoga-based wellness center in North America. So they've
Wow.
gone on and are
Yeah.
thriving as an organization that's no longer an ashram, but is a nonprofit center. The word Kripalu in English translates to mean compassion. And
Ah.
this teacher said to me last week, she said, I would like us to define compassion as unconditional neutrality. And
Mm.
I thought for sure she was
Mm.
going to say unconditional love. And I was like, oh, here we go. She's trying to teach me to love somebody that I find challenging. And I know it's right, but that's hard. And I don't want to
Mm.
do it.
It is.
And she said, she defined compassion as unconditional neutrality. How
Wow.
can I be in a place of witnessing and not being judgmental of myself or of others?
Yeah.
Um, that is like, to me, I'm every day, 4 times a day, I'm thinking, oh, unconditional neutrality. And as
Yes.
you're speaking, I'm like, oh my gosh, has a practice here in this unconditional neutrality. Like, how powerful,
It is.
how
So you see,
potent.
I mean,
Yeah,
everything is interconnected.
of
Just
course,
different ways. Just different
of
ways.
course it is.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm always I shouldn't be surprised by it anymore, right? Like this is what
No, I
happens.
know.
This,
Neither
but
do.
it
Yeah.
is always, it brings forth awe, this sense
Yeah.
of delight of wow. In one week, 3 people in 3 different ways are
Mm.
all bringing forth this idea that I
Yes.
clearly need to hear, right? How cool
But
is that? Like, pay
clearly
attention.
also me and the world, because for me, compassion has been a journey in itself because I've been really hard on myself and
Mhm.
high standards and all of that. So the neutrality is recently, but it's also because I've been shelling myself to go deeper and deeper, and in my healing journey, in past lives and stuff, and what is also actually going on in the world behind the scenes, not what we build, not what we see on the surface level coming up behind.
Right.
Yeah. And then it was like, if I'm allowing myself to be in fear, then I'm allowing these people to, I'm giving my power away. So I was like,
Mm.
I do not consent to war, to human trafficking, to like
Right. Right.
kind of human, I don't know, all the manipulation for humanity. Like there's so much right now, but I truly believe if we all would say, I do not consent, something will shift. I know it.
Hmm.
It will.
Mm.
You don't have to go out and like be on a, you know.
Right, right.
Mm.
Oh, I do believe in that. I believe in the power of the energetic work behind the
Yeah,
scenes too. Whether we're talking global scale or within yourself, for your
exactly.
day
It
or your
starts here. Yeah.
situation or your right, right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, well said.
Thank you so much. This was a delight.
I mirror that. I'm so grateful for the way
Mm.
you facilitate the conversation to naturally follow what
Mhm.
emerges, and that you trust your instincts, and how
Yeah.
beautiful and of depth the connection can be when you're trusting what
Yeah.
feels right to pursue.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And how can people reach you? Because when I went into your website, I immediately knew, like, oh, I love her.
Oh, you're so
She's
kind.
my
You're
vibe.
so kind. Well, people, absolutely be in touch, and we have a lot of free resources as well.
Yeah.
Nothing for sale. So my name, carleefain.com, or the company is everybodythrive.com. They both lead
Mm.
to the same
Beautiful name.
place. And or catch me on the Messy and Magnificent podcast, where we talk about this as well. So I look
I will have
forward
you, I will
that
share
to
your
this
links.
being a
Mm.
lifelong conversation,
Yeah.
Jaya, between you and I and anybody else listening, that this could be the beginning of getting
Yeah,
to know each other.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh.
And for everyone listening, we would love for you to share this episode. If you have any questions and reflections, share it. So Carly and I can, you know, maybe create something more together. And also I would say leave you with, what did you say? How to discern what is my truth. Was that what you said before?
Yeah, how do I
How do I?
discern what is true? How do I discern what is true?
That's a good one. So
Yeah, for
we
me
leave
too.
all
I'm
of
gonna
you with that.
yeah. I'll
Thank you
go
so
work
much.
on that one too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jaya.